What is going on, everybody? Today we are going to be discussing the most overrated fighters in the UFC. I made this style of video about a year ago, but it's time to recreate the list. And the first thing I want to get out of the way before I get under people's skin because they don't understand the criteria that I'm using, and I'm sure people will skip the intro and they'll still make some silly comments. Overrated doesn't mean you can't be good. There are many great fighters on this list. I even have champions on this list. People think that overrated means bad. No, overrated just means that people rate you higher than you actually are. All right, people paint your skill set out to be better than it really is. Even if your skill set is only a slight cut below where people paint it out to be, you can be overrated. But those guys are usually just slightly overrated. There are some guys that are massively overrated, okay? And we're just going to get into it. We are going to break this down 100%. Let's get to it. The most overrated fighters in the UFC, okay? Up first, we have Ben Askren. I'm throwing Ben Askren in the B tier. That's right. Why am I putting Ben Askren in here? He's retired. He hasn't fought in a while, and there are going to be some guys that are retired on this list just to make it fun. I just can't stand the take that people have, and that is Ben Askren 9 out of 10 times would have destroyed Jorge. Real fans know what really would have happened if that knee never landed. Essentially, guys that can't stand Jorge Masvidal like to think that Ben Askren is the much better, superior fighter. Whereas I recognize that Ben Askren at that point in time was absolutely dog shit, okay? I hold the opinion that Jorge Masvidal would have butchered Ben Askren 8 out of 10 times, okay? Just the direct opposite of the average take. Ben Askren would have absolutely annihilated him, man. Like, listen, man, there's just something called the eye test. And with Ben Askren, it's the epitome of why you should use the eye test. Ben Askren has the hip mobility of a 95-year-old woman, okay? He has the striking speed of a 95-year-old woman. He's got no sting, no ability to defend himself. It's like you're putting someone like me in front of Jorge Masvidal, essentially. But it's even worse because I would beat Ben Askren in a kickboxing match. 100% right now, I beat Ben Askren in a kickboxing match. Does that mean I win in an MMA fight? No. In a real fight, let me repeat myself. In a real fight, Ben Askren beats my ass, bro. He destroys me. But in a kickboxing match, this dude is moving like a grandmother. I'm sorry, that's not conducive to being dangerous. And even though he's got the threat of the takedown, he'd be too slow. He'd probably close his distance like this. He'd be the plotty man like Curtis Blades. And I really do think that Jorge Masvidal would have slaughtered this man 100%, without a doubt. We're not talking Ben Askren in his prime. We're talking about Askren on the night that these guys fought. Even if he were to get Jorge down, he's not finishing him. Jorge Masvidal has fantastic submission defense. It's just a 95% possibility that Jorge knocks this dude's lights out any moment they're on the feet. Askren's chin wasn't all that great at that point either. Yeah, so I'm tired of hearing that take. Ben Askren is not dangerous on the feet at all, and I really mean that. That's not an exaggeration. Stop acting like he would have absolutely ran through him. Shh, just stop. Just be quiet with that horrible take. Now we have Conor McGregor. Oh my gosh. I'm going to put Conor in the B tier. You know what? No. I'm going to put Conor in the A tier. I don't know why he's not sliding up here. Okay, finally. Oh, fuck. I dragged Paul Craig in there too. So essentially, I got Conor in the A tier. Why do I have Conor in the A tier? Well, guys, let's be honest about it, and we'll get to Paul Craig after. I know that a lot of you are on board with the whole Conor's washed, Conor's done, but I hold the opinion that Conor McGregor, a good fight for him would be someone like Jim Miller, Jared Gordon, okay? I don't think Michael Chandler is a competitive fight in any way, anyhow you want to cut it. Conor McGregor loses to Michael Chandler. Conor McGregor isn't competitive at an elite level anymore. Being an alcoholic, okay, pumping your body filled with party drugs, training in the gym with a bunch of yes men, big meaty hooks on the pads, that's not conducive to being a high-class fighter, all right? It's impossible to get to the top of the UFC unless you're dedicating your entire life and soul to MMA. I'm talking about the rankings. Conor McGregor is not only riddled with injuries, which would already put most guys at a disadvantage with their ability to continue to compete at a high level, but he's also got hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank. He's waking up in silk sheets. He has no motivation anymore. On top of that, he is just demolishing his body with drugs and drinking. On top of that, he doesn't train like a high-level athlete anymore. As I said, the extent of Conor's training is sparring with PFL bantamweights, okay? Sparring with guys that don't want to hurt him. Sparring with guys in big boxing gloves where they're not grappling. No one's putting Conor through any like gritty wrestling rounds, I don't think. His training really does consist of the big round pad you see at the gym. And you'll see him with house music, big meaty hooks, back and forth. And the coach is saying, yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we go. And Conor gets an ego boost from that. But at the end of the day, that's not fooling me. Jim Miller is basically a guy, Conor's career is declining. Jim Miller is declining, but they're both hitting the same wavelength. They're both hitting the same wavelength. And I genuinely don't think that Conor McGregor has like a massive advantage over Jim Miller. Conor, another big issue is that he is just not a good nail. All right. He's a terrible nail. You put a couple of good shots on him. You kick this man in the leg a couple of times. He starts thinking about the yacht that's parked out of the arena. I got the yacht. I got all the food, 5-star chef at my command. I got anything I want. Why do I have to go through a gritty war right now when I could just chill, man? And that's what's going on in Conor's head, except it's an Irish accent. And I think that Jim Miller and Jared Gordon are like the good fights for him. I don't think he'll be competitive with Michael Chandler. I don't think he'll be competitive with anyone close to the rankings or in the rankings at all. He has a puncher's chance, and that's it. Still, people don't understand how seriously overrated he is. He's good for someone like me. Bro, I don't think I would beat Conor in a fight. Obviously, dude, Conor would destroy me. But he's a gym bully, basically. So shout out to Conor. I think that Paul Craig's also pretty overrated. People talk about this guy's ground game. Again, it's like, oh shit, if this goes to the ground, watch how dangerous Paul Craig is. Watch how crafty he is, right? Going into the Brendan Allen fight, imagine you were to hang out with a couple of friends that don't watch the sport. You're going to describe the main event. You're going to say, dude, Paul Craig gets his ass kicked on the feet. Just wait till it hits the mat. This dude is a savage. And then you just see him getting pummeled on the ground. But he's like the puncher's chance guy when it comes to submissions. He's not that great, okay? Yeah, he can get the better of Andre Muniz. Yeah, we underrated Brendan Allen. But Paul Craig's grappling, I really do think it's kind of overrated, to be honest. A little bit overrated. Rafael Fiziev, I'm going to put Fiziev in the B tier, okay? I'll put Fiziev in the B tier. Now, I think Fiziev is a little bit overrated, and some of you guys are going to be thrown off guard by this, but it's about how he looks. Like, Fiziev just looks like he's this epic striker. He looks like a Viking, right? He's got this stocky build. He yells when he throws his strikes. Bop, bop, ah! He's like that short, stocky, explosive guy. People expect him to be fucking knocking everyone out. That Renato Moicano KO was a perfect combination with Fiziev punching as hard as he can. But in reality, he doesn't even have that much power, and he's kind of small for the lightweight division, and he gasses out. Rafael Fiziev doesn't have the best gas tank. If you put the pressure on this guy, he'll start to wear out. His power fades very easily. Listen, he's still a great striker. Please do not take this as Rafael Fiziev isn't a great striker. I just thought that Mateusz Gamrot was going to not swivel his head around and make him look like an owl, essentially. Mateusz Gamrot made the Muay Thai guy, swivel his head around like an owl. And that's not the great look. That's not the best look. So Fiziev, in my opinion, slightly overrated. The Fiziev experiment, the Gamrot experiment kind of failed a little bit. I don't think Gamrot's overrated right now because, again, people kind of already view him as Mateusz Gamrot, fluking his way to the top. Fiziev still talked about as like, oh, no one could possibly hang with him on the feet. He's so dangerous. Wasn't able to crack AG at all. Like, I'm talking about hurt him. Like a close fight, he's still good. Still a good fighter, just a tad bit overrated. Gamrot was swiveling his head around with that right hand, making it very close. Not the best gas tank, but yeah, maybe I'll put him at the C tier. I think C tier would probably be better because I don't think he's B tier overrated. Israel Adesanya, okay? Adesanya has dropped from S tier to B tier. At one time, Adesanya was my most overrated fighter in the UFC. His championship reign is painted out to be like this masterful thing, even though half of the fights that he had as a champion were either robberies or brutal stink fests that I fell asleep while watching. Every now and then you have a good fight riddled in there. But I think now after the Strickland loss, people kind of recognize that Izzy ain't that great. Now, again, this is not to take away from Strickland. Strickland's not on this list. I actually think Strickland's still kind of underrated. But I don't think Izzy is that amazing, and I think people are kind of catching on to that these days. There are a lot of fighters that people would pick to beat Izzy right now. At least, I think that people might pick Khamzat to beat him. I think that people would probably pick Dricus to beat him. I think they would pick Strickland to beat him in a rematch. Some of you guys would pick Whitaker to beat him. I still recognize Izzy as being like a solid top 5 middleweight in the world, but I'm not going to call him like S tier overrated because that fight with Strickland really changed the way people view Izzy. People expected him to go in there and school him. I didn't think he was going to school him. I thought he was going to win, but even I overrated him going into that a little bit and underrated Strickland. Let's get on to it. I have Roman Dolidze. I'm going to throw Roman Dolidze in the A tier. I'm not going to say S tier. I'll say A tier for Roman Dolidze. I'm just sick and tired of people saying Roman Dolidze eats this guy alive, eats that guy alive. Roman Dolidze is going to be fighting someone. I forget who they matched him up against. Everyone in the comment section is like, oh man, not even competitive at all. Roman Dolidze, are you kidding me? He destroys him. If you pick against Roman Dolidze in any matchup, they're going to call you a casual. Listen, man, when you are losing to Marvin Vettori on the feet, okay, when Marvin isn't shooting any takedowns, you're overrated if people are talking about you like that. This dude sucks on the feet. He's mediocre as fuck. He has a big slugger's right hand, and that's about it. Marvin Vettori is out here getting the better of him, and that's already a bad look in and of itself. He has this really dangerous ground game. I got to respect it, but not the best wrestling. Who's he out here taking down? No one. Roman Dolidze isn't that great. He's a one-trick pony. I'm sick and tired of people talking about him like he's just going to tear through the next guy with ease. If he can get them to the ground, which hardly ever happens unless someone makes a mistake first, okay, and someone shoots themselves in the foot and accidentally winds up on the ground with Roman Dolidze. But I just think he's overrated. He's sloppy as hell on the feet. You can't get outstruck by Marvin Vettori and have people talking about you like that and not be overrated as hell. On to the next one. I'm going to go with Khalil Rountree, okay? Listen, I'm picking him to beat Anthony Smith, but if Smith takes him down, it's probably a wrap, all right? Rountree is talked about as being like one of the most dangerous strikers in the game when he's a can crusher that's never beaten anyone worth a damn. I think he's going to beat Smith, but that's more based on Anthony Smith taking it on short notice and just having a really horrible ability to check kicks, and that's where Rountree excels. But if you look at it, this dude is losing to Marcin Prachnio. He's getting dominated by Ion Cutelaba, and Cutelaba's not even that good to begin with either. Every single one of his wins over guys that are just kind of mid. Eric Anders, as I said, he beat Dustin Jacoby. I didn't mention Dustin Jacoby, but that was a robbery. He didn't even win that fight. That was a brutal robbery. Who else does he beat? Carl Roberson? I mean, Marvin Vettori destroyed Carl Roberson in like one round. And that's Vettori getting a finish, which is unheard of these days. I think that he's good, but you've got full violence out here after Adesanya knocks out Pereira in the rematch, and Pereira mentions he's going to move up, and full violence, like the king of hyping up Khalil Rountree, of course. They post a photo of Rountree and Pereira, and they're like, what about this one, boys? What do you think? As if they did something there, like, holy shit, this is an amazing matchup. They expect fans' eyes to be popping out of their heads. Oh, I can't wait for the high-level striking. And what are you doing? You're matching up Alex Pereira, former champion, 6-time Glory kickboxing champion as well, with the guy that lost to Marcin Prachnio. It just doesn't make sense. He's good. He is fun to watch. His finishes are vicious. He's must-see TV in the cage. But people overrate him, all right? People overrate him. He is going to beat Anthony Smith, but there's a chance Smith gets him down and just showcases the levels. Speaking of Alex Pereira, I'm going to put him in the D tier, okay? This doesn't mean that Alex isn't good, okay? He's amazing. I just think that people overrate him a tiny bit. And I'm talking about the attitude that his fans have towards his future opponents, like Jamal Hill, that's the best example right now. People are saying to Jamal Hill, listen, with all due respect, I totally understand you're a former champion, you're a legend of the game, but don't you dare even think you have a chance against Pereira. That's just disrespectful. Please get on your knees and apologize to him. Shut the fuck up. Like, Pereira's good. He's the best fighter. He's the best striker in that division, for sure. But it's not like he's just blowing everyone out of the water and the fights aren't close or competitive in any way. He's a great fighter. That's why he's D tier, okay? I just think that, again, people saying Jamal is completely out of bounds for even considering fighting this man. I mean, you may as well just retire Alex Pereira right now. You're not even worthy to be in the cage with this guy. No one is. He's the GOAT, number one all time. I just don't like that type of shit. Past Khabib already, even though he's only got, 6 wins in the big leagues? Come on. He's great. He's great, but just a tad bit overrated. Up next, we have Yaroslav Amosov, okay? I'm going to go with S tier. This is Bellator's former champion that lost to Luke Rockhold, Kamaru Usman, and Michael Johnson's former old man training partner. That's right. I don't even know the name of the guy that beat him. I think his name is Jason Jackson. That's the guy with the dreadlocks, the goatee that you'll see in the background of a bunch of sparring videos from UFC fighters. He trains out of Kill Cliff. He's been around for a while, old head for sure. And he just destroyed Yaroslav Amosov and knocked him out. This is the guy that people were saying is championship worthy. Like, you'll constantly see these comments, or at least back in the day, you would have seen Yaroslav is that one dude that could definitely be a UFC champ. I know people say this too often about Bellator fighters, but Amosov actually could beat Usman. He's getting chinned by the moral support guy at Kill Cliff FC. All right, the old head that is considering retirement after this fight, essentially. No disrespect to Jason Jackson, just kind of joking around a little bit, but come on. Amosov, typical Bellator champ, Bellator fraud. Kevin Holland would be a 10-time Bellator champion, straight up. Okay, let's get on to the next one. Is there any other Bellator fighter that we have to put in here as well? Yep, there we go. Patchy Mix. I'm going to say A tier. Why am I saying A tier? Listen, man, he beat Sergio Pettis, couldn't cut it in the UFC. He beat Rufion Stotts, which is like the poor man's Aljo as well. Good KO, fair enough. He beat that guy that Petr Yan went to a decision with back in the day, and somehow that's like indicative that he's better than Yan because he finished him. Listen, man, at the end of the day, again, no one dreams of Bellator. I've said this before. The best fighters go to the UFC. The guys that go to the top in Bellator and decide to stay there are the ones that settle. I'm sure Patchy Mix is good, but I don't think he beats anyone in the top 5 in the UFC. Maybe, just maybe, he could get the better of someone like maybe Chris Gutierrez or an old man Dominic Cruz. 100% he could be competitive there, but he's not beating anyone in the top 5, 6, 7. He's not beating Yan, Song Yadong. He's not beating Aljo. He's not beating Merab. He's not beating Cheeto. He's not beating O'Malley. He's all right, but you cannot tell me that this guy is like the best bantamweight in the world. I also don't think he's trash. He wouldn't even be in the UFC. Of course he could be in the UFC, but just by virtue of him being a Bellator champion, people are going to hype him up and always say that he's better because they want to be these super hardcore fans and they want us to say, man, how did you know that? Like, they want us to follow them like they're Jesus, essentially. Just stop. Next up, we got Beneil Dariush, all right? I've overrated him massively. I'm not going to just say, oh, he got KO'd by Arman Tsarukyan and I picked Beneil Dariush in that fight, therefore he's shit. I'm totally sorry. But I think it's fair to say now that he's been overrated. Now, I think right now, this is what his proper rating is. He's a good fighter that's just incredibly slow and doesn't have a chin anymore, and we overrate his ability to stand on the feet with guys. I don't know how he was able to shut down Gamrot so well. If Arman Tsarukyan is chinning Beneil Dariush, then Gamrot probably would be able to do that, I would assume. But I think a lot of that is because he got softened up by Charles first. He's not effective on the feet anymore. He's too slow for these lightweights. Amazing grappler, fantastic grappler. But unless he gets you into the second round, third round, when he starts to heat up a little bit, you're probably going to have the ability to school this guy if you're a ranked lightweight. I was talking about Beneil as someone that will give Makhachev issues in the future. Someone that would beat Charles. I overrated him massively. Let's get on to it. Up next, we got Paulo Costa. I'm going to put Costa in the S tier. I think he's one of the most overrated fighters in UFC history. You can't give me a good Paulo Costa win after 2019, right? And that's the Yoel Romero win, in which that's also something that could be a robbery. You can't give me a good definitive Paulo Costa win, straight up, without any controversy, without any letdowns. Luke Rockhold couldn't finish Rockhold, who has no chin, who's washed up. Come on, what are we doing here? You can't even finish Luke Rockhold. That's pathetic in and of itself. You're supposed to go out there and knock his ass out. Then we have guys like Uriah Hall, Johnny Hendricks, washed up fighters, and Uriah Hall was tagging him up too. Paulo Costa, overrated power. People think of him as like this big megalodon puncher that's going to KO everyone in his path. He lost to Marvin Vettori. You have to be a special kind of shitty to lose to Marvin Vettori on the feet. And that's that. And he had a size advantage over Vettori too. We talked about Adesanya. I think Adesanya was overrated, okay? I still think he's a little overrated. Paulo Costa was Izzy's easiest fight to date. That's the one fight where Izzy completely styled over someone and had no adversity whatsoever. Come on. This dude's incredibly overrated. People still talk about him like he's this insanely dangerous fighter. Like he's the bad boy in the division. Oh, you don't want to stand in front of that guy. Oh, you better get off the tracks with that guy. As if he's going to do shit. He has to land like a 20-punch combination. Max Holloway has more pound-for-pound power than Big Paulo Costa, okay? Up next, we have Steve Erceg, okay? I'm going to put Steve Erceg in the B tier. I know that a lot of you guys jumped ship from the Steve Erceg hype train. If you guys don't understand who this guy is, you don't have to feel bad for that. There's no reason why you should even know who he is. He's just a guy that was given a lot of hype by wannabe hardcore fans that choose to hype up random prospects to try to sound different. And he was someone that had one fight in the UFC, won it by decision, and you had a bunch of guys, mostly Australians, talking about Erceg as if he's like this next level matrix style of MMA, the new wave of MMA, just skill off the charts, right? And he goes to like a little stinker decision against someone that no one other than me picked to win, okay? Stinker decision, loses a round. And essentially, people would still talk about Erceg as if he's really good. He's just a mid-flyweight. Mid-flyweight, not that great. He's okay, but he doesn't stand out. It's like every flyweight's kind of fast twitch. You know what I mean? So Steve Erceg, overrated. Half of you probably just found out who he was. Another person that's actually overrated is Natalia Silva. This is a WMMA fighter. People talk about her like she's up next. She's the new thing. I am not going to get fooled by a couple of feints, okay? Natalia Silva is the epitome of flash, and that's it. She's all flash. She's this fancy schmancy looking fighter that feints around but doesn't actually do shit. Hardly throws any strikes. And people also rate her highly just because of the way she looks. Oh, great. So she looks good, and she does feints, and somehow she's Alexander Volkanovski on the feet. Get the fuck out of here, okay? Get out of here. The last fight that she had was a disgrace. People were talking about how amazing Natalia Silva is. She's going to destroy her opponent. And she looks like Izzy out there throwing feints against an absolute can. And people were still talking about her like she's next up. Give me a break. Up next, we have Valentina Shevchenko. Now, I'm going to put her at A tier. A lot of you guys were upset with the way that I reacted to her last fight against Grasso. I picked Shevchenko to win. But one thing I really didn't like was the low IQ from her. Now, people paint out Shevchenko to be like this cyborg, this Russian spy, right? Because she doesn't even have a human brain. It's just a robot in there, just calculating the perfect strikes. It's just a sequence of perfection everywhere she goes, every strike she throws. And she throws a really nice-looking body kick in the first round against Alexa Grasso. Wicked body kick, one of the nastiest kicks I've seen in WMMA history. Doesn't go back to it the entire fight. Not at all. No kicks, nothing. Just punching and boxing with Alexa Grasso. Low IQ from Valentina Shevchenko. And people make the claim that, dude, she can't throw kicks. She got taken down the first fight. There's a reason she's not throwing kicks. She doesn't want to get submitted again. She got submitted because she threw a spinning back kick, okay, and exposed her back. She didn't get submitted because she threw a fucking roundhouse kick. You had the Weasel painting Shevchenko out to be like one of the best strikers the world has ever seen, one of the most perfect fighters the world has ever seen, regardless of whether it's WMMA or not. She's all right. She's a good fighter, and that's a rarity sometimes in the divisions that she's fighting in. That's a rarity. She's a good fighter, but she's massively overrated. Usman Nurmagomedov. Let's put Usman Nurmagomedov in the A tier. if you're going to a scraper decision against Brent Primus, that's already pathetic in and of itself. If you have people calling you the heir to Makhachev, a guy that would be top 5 in the UFC right now, Beneil Dariush would probably clean up Usman Nurmagomedov. Maybe not, though, just because of the matchup thing. Good takedown defense from Usman probably, and fast twitch and whatnot. But Brent Primus, yeah, he's probably tough, but come on. There's 9 lightweights, aside from old slow man Beneil, that probably beat Usman Nurmagomedov. Michael Chandler would probably give him a tougher fight than Brent Primus and might even KO him. He's a young gun. He's got a bright future ahead of him, but he certainly wouldn't be a top 5 UFC fighter. And let's stop talking about him like he would be if he were to join the UFC right now. Oh, and he's on PEDs. He still couldn't finish Brent Primus. 40-year-old washed-up MMA fighter. UFC reject. Oh, yep. Now it's time to talk about Henry Cejudo. I'm going to put Cejudo in the B tier. All right? I think that right now people probably rate him properly. But you know what? No, we're going to put him in the A tier, actually. I think Cejudo gets rated too high by most people. He's in most people's top 15, top 10. I don't think he's a top 15 worthy guy to have on your GOAT list. I think he's a glorified brawler on the feet. People talk about Henry Cejudo as if he's some masterful karate guy in MMA, even though he doesn't really have any great wins other than Marlon Moraes. I mean, let's be honest. The TJ Dillashaw win, weight drain TJ. Let's talk about the Dominic Cruz win. Dominic Cruz is one of the few names where he has an amazing name to be on someone else's resume, but the version of Cruz that showed up was worse than a mediocre UFC fighter fighting a guy that has championship-worthy skills, right? Off the couch, 4-year layoff, riddled with injuries, pillow punches, and the takedown threat means nothing against a guy like Cejudo. Free win, walk in the park, and that was his big title defense. Marlon Moraes, good win. If you're the first guy to fraud check someone and that fraud check is in a title shot position, a title fight, that's pretty decent. But Marlon Moraes, that win hasn't aged well at all. That guy is a blip in history, right? And he's got a split decision over DJ, but DJ also knocked him out. The one-on-one, I kind of favored DJ's KO over the split decision, which could have went either way. The DJ win is good. But I think Henry Cejudo is one of the few guys that had like these really prestigious titles, but they're all overrated title wins, essentially. So, again, they talk about him like he's Wonder Boy on the feet. He's someone that bites down on the mouthpiece, grits down and brawls sometimes. That's that. He's not got this great ability to hold people down, submit him, or hurt people on the ground. Like the one guy he's ever hurt on the ground was Marlon Moraes. Talks about himself like he's top 5 all time, but he's not even close. Doesn't even have that many wins in the UFC. Has losses that he hasn't avenged. Like, this dude lose to Benavidez? Come on. It is what it is, man. It is what it is. And he lost to Aljo, where he was the favorite, and people were calling me silly for picking Aljo to beat Henry Cejudo, a gold Olympic medalist. And we saw how easily Aljo got done by O'Malley, right? So I think that Henry Cejudo is a little bit overrated. Nah, I'll put him B tier. I think it's a little bit too much to put him A tier, maybe B tier. A little bit overrated, but solidly overrated, not massively overrated. On to the next one, we have our boy, Khamzat Chimaev. Listen, if you're losing 2 out of 3 rounds to Usman, who's taking a fight on short notice, no training camp, didn't have a year to bulk up, and you have a whole year to bulk up, whole year to prepare, and you have 1 round in you, okay? And you're not able to do anything other than that, and you wet blanket a guy like Usman, who isn't really known for incredible jiu-jitsu, when you're talked about as being the most dangerous grappler in the sport, you're overrated. That's that. And he's like a Dubai influencer at this point. You'll see him posting a big bag of cash at like a breakfast table in some lavish buffet in Dubai. Trains at a health spa rather than All Stars, the gritty gym that he used to train at in the past. Kind of being a little hard on him maybe, but Khamzat's still good. He can still be a champion, but he's going to have competitive fights at the elite level. And that's why I think he's overrated, because we were discussing Khamzat as if he was the chosen one, as if he was going to run through everyone. And he's not going to do that. He's going to have elite fights. He's going to have competitive fights at the elite level. And some of you guys are going to say in the comments right now, I guarantee it, there are going to be these comments. 100% check the comment section to make sure and verify it. You're an idiot, bro. Oh, so he has competitive fights at the elite level, therefore he's overrated? What a fucking idiot, bro. Yeah, Therefore, he's overrated. Khamzat Chimaev wasn't given hype to have close. Oh, I can't wait for Khamzat Chimaev to have a close, razor-close decision where he loses 2 out of 3 rounds to Kamaru Usman and have a draw in his prime when he has a year to bulk up to middleweight and he gasses out after 1 round. Yeah, people weren't hyping him up to lose 2 rounds. Okay, Khamzat's hype was about him running through people like that once he gets to the top, once he hits his prime. He's hit his prime, loses 2 out of 3 rounds to Usman. His hype does not come from having competitive fights. I can't wait for Khamzat to be competitive at the top. Fuck that. His hype came from destroying people, okay? So, yeah, shout out to everyone commenting that. Well, you're an idiot. What he's a competitive fights and therefore he's overrated? Yeah, he could be a champion and still be overrated. Colby Covington. I'm going to put Colby in the B tier. I don't think Colby's trash, okay? I'm not saying that. I'm not one of these guys that just doesn't like Colby and says he's garbage. No, he's a good fighter. He's just one of these guys where he doesn't have great wins. His best win is over RDA, who was 35, wasn't the best welterweight either. And it was a 48-47 where he got taken down. It was like a razor-close decision. He's a good fighter, for sure. He gave Usman tough fights. There's a reason why people recognize him as great. For sure, I understand it. Not that much better than Bilal, though. Right? Like, Bilal has a more impressive resume than Colby. Maybe you could look at the dominance of Colby Covington, but you also have to take into account how washed the people he is that he's dominating. Maia, old man Woodley, old man Jorge, and, of course, old man. Who's that other old man that he took out? Robbie Lawler? You get my point. It just doesn't have the wins that you would need to have for it to make sense. Of people saying he's going to go out here and melt Leon, melt Usman, melt this elite guy and that elite guy. He's never melted an elite guy ever. Gomes. Oh, yeah, Gomes. People think of this guy as like a high-level striker, overrated as fuck, boring as hell. Trust me, if you don't want to fall asleep, don't watch Gomes fight. Oh, Lerone Murphy. Boom. A tier. The amount of hype that this guy gets is insane. He should have lost to Josh Kalibau, but Josh Kalibau had a horrible fight IQ. This dude will never crack the top 5 ever. Just because he's British and has like a long reach and I guess is well-rounded. Somehow people think this is like the next GSP. I know no one really calls him the next GSP, but he's not that good. You're not that guy, pal. Who else am I going to put on here? Of course, we're going to put Robert Whittaker in the C tier. Listen, Whittaker's not garbage just because he lost to Duplessis. We just really underrated Duplessis, and Duplessis is really a freak of nature. We didn't know that. Whittaker has been dominating middleweights for years. Yeah, middleweight division that wasn't that great, fair enough, but he's still schooling these guys. He still beat Jared Cannonier convincingly, and that was a good, solid win that's aged well. Cannonier is still good, still at the top of that division. Schooled Vettori, beat Adesanya in the rematch. Adesanya's not an amazing fighter, but it's a tough matchup for Whittaker stylistically, and he beat him. But also lost to Izzy, too. He beat Yoel twice. People try to act like those were robberies, or at least the second one was a robbery. I think listen, both of them were wins for Whittaker. We could debate this another time. We don't have time to debate the second fight right now, but I think it was a clear win for Whittaker. When I watched it live, scored it for Yoel, but over time I've seen it for Whittaker more and more. But my point is, if you're beating Yoel where he's in his old man prime, okay, his old man prime, his third prime, those are still great wins. Whittaker is still one of the middleweight goats, and just because he loses to one guy and his chin ain't that great doesn't mean he's all of a sudden that overrated. Like, people would be putting him in the A tier. Oh, Whittaker sucks secretly. No, he doesn't. Doesn't suck secretly at all. Had a close fight with Till. That's when Till was taking his career serious. Who else does he beat? Gaslam, destroyed Gaslam. The issue with Whittaker is that he doesn't have a lot of power, but I kind of think it's impressive when you have to be perfect for 15 minutes and 25 minutes, and you can be perfect for 15 and 25 minutes in a division where people get KO'd. Whittaker's done that many times against big punchers. So I don't think he's that overrated, but I think his grappling may have been a little overrated by us, like the takedown defense. But you know what? I'll put him C tier. Hope you guys enjoyed. Oh, and I'll also put Gilbert Burns in the C tier too. I think people understand Gilbert Burns isn't this like menacing finisher on the ground. And that's that. That's the extent of it. That's it. Don't mean to piss anyone off with this one, but let's be honest. Like, Gilbert Burns couldn't submit a fly unless it's Magny, and Magny gets submitted. That's his one Achilles heel, essentially. Gilbert Burns is still a great grappler. Defensively, wizard, 100 out of 100. Striker, I think we could agree Gilbert Burns is pretty good on the feet. And the Bilal Muhammad fight is not the best representation. I think he was overtrained. All right, he had fought like twice in the span of 4 months, and that was his third fight in the span of 5 months. He was overtrained. He looked slower than ever, injury prone in that fight. Not the best representation of him on the feet, but I just think that Gilbert Burns is not as good of a grappler as people paint him out to be. Like, he's a great grappler. Again, you can be a great fighter and be overrated because he's not like 100 out of 100 grappler. People would put Gilbert Burns as like a top 5 grappler in the UFC. Not even close. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.